Hi, welcome to another Facebook Live with Veterinary Referral Center of Central Oregon. I'm Jen Bentley, the dermatologist at VRCCO, and I have Dr. Matt Vaughn joining us today.
Hello.
I've also got Shelby in the back who's going to be answering or feeding us questions today. But we are going to be talking about how your pet can be a hero by donating blood. And I will let our expert, Dr. Matt Vaughn, introduce himself.
Hello, so I'm Matt Vaughn. I'm a specialist in internal medicine, small animal internal medicine. I grew up on the East Coast and went to vet school in California. Did 4 years of vet school there, followed by an internship and then a residency there in internal medicine. So I worked for about 9 years in Seattle and then moved to Bend 3 years ago and to help open our practice here. And so I serve as an internal medicine specialist. I do a lot of cancer care, deal with a lot of geriatric patients, infectious diseases, autoimmune disorders, all kinds of things.
Awesome. And so you did an internship and residency, so how many total years of schooling did you have?
Well, if you include undergraduate, I guess that's 12, so 12 years.
12 years. Yeah. Definitely an expert in his field. So before we get started, as always, please, if you know anybody else that's interested in joining this discussion, please feel free to share this video. Otherwise, I'll get us started off with the big question is, why would a hospital like ours need blood? What do we use blood for other pets?
Yeah, it depends a little bit on what the problem is. So if you take a step back and you think what's in blood, blood's made up of both cells and the fluid called plasma. And when we're talking about with blood transfusions in replenishing those cells, we're usually interested in what's called the red blood cells. So those are the cells that carry oxygen throughout the body. And dogs can be low or anemic or low in red blood cells for a number of reasons. So sometimes it might be trauma. So we'll see dogs that are hit by a car or might have a bad laceration or wound. We also see some autoimmune disorders, so that's up my alley, where the dog or cat immune system destroying their own blood cells. So we have to help replenish that while we get them better. And then another common cause we see are internal bleeding from things like cancers. So a tumor on the spleen or a tumor on the liver. So blood transfusions can be used to buy us time to replenish those red blood cells, get oxygen back to the body, while we then work towards fixing the underlying problem. The other type of reason that we might use a blood transfusion is the plasma carries a lot of important proteins, and those proteins help the blood to clot. And so dogs or cats might be deficient in those proteins. So for instance, a hemophilia would be a rare genetic cause of that, but more commonly what we see here are dogs that have gotten into rat bait. So some rodenticide or rat bait has an anticoagulant that keeps the blood from clotting. That's how it kills the rat.
Right.
And dogs might get into some hidden rat bait, eat that, and then start bleeding internally. So a plasma transfusion can help correct those proteins, stop the bleeding, to give us time to give an antidote to save the pet.
Okay. And how much blood would like a typical labrador need? Like, what are we talking about size-wise?
Yeah. Well, I mean, our goals when we do a transfusion aren't necessarily to replenish all of the blood,
right.
But a Labrador might use what we call a double unit. So that might be basically a pint of blood from another pet.
Right. So you guys can see how this is really, really important for a hospital like ours that basically has very high-end emergencies that would need blood transfusions. Shelby, is there any questions from the audience?
Yes, Bernadette Rice would like to know, how long is the process?
Well, I guess it depends on what you're talking about. So the process of getting a blood transfusion, it's administered over a period of typically 4 hours. So we like to go slow with the transfusion, monitor the pet to make sure they aren't having any type of reaction. In regards to donating blood, so that's what we're looking forward to bringing on board here as a blood donor program. The donation process, once a donor is screened, the actual blood donation takes hopefully about 10 minutes. We may or may not need a light sedation for the pet, but it's about 10 minutes and then lots and lots of treats.
And basically, what is the screening process? What are you screening for when you have a pet donating?
Well, first off, we want to make sure that it's a healthy pet. And we want to make sure they're an appropriate donor. So they need to be a good enough size. So most dogs have to be over 50 pounds and a cat over 10 pounds. They have to be a good age, so 1 to 7 years. and they need to be healthy. So we do a physical exam by myself, and then general health blood panels for screening. And then we look for some infectious diseases, because the last thing we want to do is transmit an infectious disease with a transfusion. Thankfully, they're very rare here in Oregon, but that's the process. Yeah.
And I'm assuming these are free things that are given to the donors.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So we provide examinations, blood work, blood screening, continued annual blood screening. It's also important to have these guys on preventative heartworm, flea, and tick medications so they don't pick up any of those types of infections, and that's something else that's provided. We also give some thank you gift cards from local businesses to try and maintain that community involvement.
Nice.
Too. Yeah.
Awesome.
And you get to save a life.
Yes. And if you are just joining us, we are talking about doing blood transfusions and how you can have your pet become a donor at our hospital. And the other big question, I'm sure our audience has, is who do they even contact? What's the first step in having their pet become a blood donor?
Yeah, I would just call our office. The blood donor coordinator, her name is Sarah, and she's also one of our fabulous customer service representatives. So if you call us at 541-210-9200, we can get you started. Yeah.
And you had mentioned also cats too, so cats can donate blood as well.
Cats can donate blood. I've yet to meet a cat that will lie still for 10 minutes, and so cats usually need some sedation. They need to be indoor-only cats because they can pick up some viral infections that we don't want to transmit. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, if there's any other questions that you guys have out there in our audience, please let us know. I'm just going to ask basically the last question is, how many donors do you think we need in our program going forward?
If you look at what you might need, we need a donor to commit to 4 donations a year for 2 years. And if we look at that and our current needs, it would be great to have about a dozen donors out there in the community. Right now we're using donors of pets of our own staff. So as you know, both your dog and my dog are retired blood donors,
Yes.
but we have other dogs on staff. But it's not enough, and so we need some help. And that's where all of you out there can help us with that. But I think about a dozen to do scheduled donations and potentially be on call for emergencies when we're low on our blood supply.
And your own personal dog has been a donor. Is there any case that sticks out in mind where you actually used your own dog's blood to help a case of yours?
Yeah, actually the first time, she wasn't a donor. We didn't have a blood donor program there, but I had a patient that had autoimmune disease, and they were destroying their own blood cells, and we gave 5 transfusions, and it still wasn't enough for this dog, and it needed another. We were out of blood, so we were out of blood. Nobody had blood. I happened to bring my dog to work that day, and she gave a transfusion, and that was the transfusion that bought us enough time for the medication to work.
Wow.
And it was really cool because I get to be on the other side of it, not the doctor's side, but here I was, with the dog giving the donation, and a lot of fulfillment came from that. And that client came back with rechecks for years afterwards, and would always come back and get my dog. It was really a tight bond there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I hope you can appreciate how much that this is needed for our community here of pets. If you have any questions about blood donation, blood transfusions, please either give us a call at 541-210-9200, or of course reach out to us on Facebook. If you like this video, give it a big thumbs up, and please let us know what other topics you guys would want in the future. We are here every other Wednesday at 4 o'clock.